Oregon overcame what seemed like everything to get one of the biggest wins of the Dan Lanning era.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is going to be very fun. I'm going to enjoy this very much because, yes, it is that time once again for a reaction episode of Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for bearing with me, being patient, and making this your first listen or your first view post Oregon beating USC. They could have won this game by 30. Instead, they only won it by 15. Ho-hum. Ho-hum. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks and the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all for making that the case. This episode brought to you by our friends over at GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I don't know how I still have voice left today. I called a double overtime football game for SUU, and now I am here, and oh my goodness. This was just an incredible football game across the board, and Oregon played phenomenally well. And also at the same time, horrifically sloppy. And yet you look up, and they've beaten USC number 15 by 15. I can't wait for the committee to drop USC out of the rankings and everyone be able to say, oh, Oregon hadn't beaten a ranked team. Hasn't happened. Haven't done it, man. I think the word that comes to my mind most often as I think about this win is overcome. Oregon had to overcome a lot because the offensive line injuries were actually wild. Legitimately insane. I am so unbelievably impressed with Alik Terry and his guys and having them ready to go. By the end of the game, this was the game day matchup, the premier game in college football this week. All eyes were on Autzen. And while the game was still well within doubt, you had Charlie Pickard at center, former walk-on, and guys who, if I'd made a long depth chart when the season began, would have been anywhere from 4th to 6th on the offensive tackle group. Those guys were out there playing. You barely noticed. Oregon was without, 11 players? It felt like you could have put together a pretty good team of injured Ducks offensively that were on the sidelines in this game. It was absolutely incredible. And USC dealt with injuries as well. They absolutely did. But it was not as severe as Oregon. Not even close. Because the group up front, that is where I just keep coming back to. Dante Moore in this game was sacked a grand total of 0 times. Oregon averaged just 4.4 yards a carry, one of their lowest totals of the season, but they ran for 179 yards as a team. Man, that offensive line just showed up. And in the game, the biggest game that USC has played under Lincoln Riley in 3 years. They're playing to have the right to go to the playoff. They win that game, and USC plays UCLA for the right to go to the playoff next week. I wouldn't even push back on it. Wouldn't have pushed back if Oregon had been left out at 10-2 in that scenario. Had to have it. Game of the year, and guys embraced to the maximum the next man up mentality you've got to have in a spot like that. Just an incredible effort from the boys up front. Absolutely phenomenal. And man, there has to be a hint of embarrassment in there for USC. You didn't sack Dante Moore, and you couldn't stop Oregon's rushing attack, and they were playing guys who haven't even logged 100 snaps. I think there are guys playing that didn't even have 50 snaps on the season. And you still couldn't get it done. Still could not get it done. USC got every single pass interference flag to go in their direction. or not have a flag thrown at all when it was warranted, or just flags in general. And yet Oregon won the game by 15. The amazing thing about this game is that Oregon was overcoming all of that. The injuries, the penalties against a good USC team. And they could have won this game by 30 points. This could have gotten ugly. And Oregon made a bevy of mistakes to allow USC to stay in it. And guess what? I'm not going to talk about those today. I'm not going to talk about the bad stuff, because this is a win that should be embraced by Duck fans, held on to, emotionally carried with them as they go to sleep tonight. And it should have some residual effects when you wake up on Sunday morning. Because, man, that was an awesome football game. You've got a rival coming to town. You've got game day in town. Everything was there. You had to have it. And when your backs were against the wall, and I was going to say when the chips were down, but how about when most of your team feels like they're down, the offense just steps up in a big way. Defense didn't have its best day. Defense did more than enough. USC in this game ran for 52 yards as a team. 52. I think that's their lowest total of the year. I'm going to double check that. So was the defense perfect? Nope, certainly not. But did they do enough things well? Yes, they absolutely did. Remember what the story was on the defense, or the narrative, so to speak, coming into the year? It was that they have not been able to keep good teams in big games under 30 points. Well, here we are. 27 points, and nope, it wasn't perfect. They made some mistakes. I think the officiating helped out USC in a significant way. And for the second time this year, I have felt that way about a game that Oregon has played. And again, I cannot attribute that to malicious intent when it's very easily attributable to incompetence. And the way that Oregon just overcame time and again, and they had chances to put this game away, and they just simply didn't. USC stats are not coming up for some reason, so I'll get back to you on the rushing thing. But the way that Oregon overcame again and went and played, and they had chances and made mistakes. I'm going to talk about those tomorrow, because, man, this was a stressful game at the end, and it was exciting, it was exhilarating, it was all of those things. However, if Oregon had played a better brand of football, I think they would have put up at least 56 points. At least. I think they could have gone for more. They didn't. But, man, the Will Stein critics have to take a seat today. Doesn't mean there won't be opportunities to return to that train. You can't be there today, even though there were moments where I was wanting to rip my hair out at certain spots in this game, without question. Without question. And guess what? 42 points in a big game when you had to have it and the defense was off. Oregon's ability to play complementary football this year has been great. In Penn State, the defense had to step up in the first half, and the offense got it going. They go out and win the game. And here, defense doesn't have its best day. Doesn't have its best fastball. Usually tops out 97, 98. Today is 94, 95. Well, you better have a sweeper or a slider, and they did. And that was the offense today. So, yeah, keep leaving your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. Want to know where you guys' heads are at. I have so many more thoughts. The big picture ramifications of this game are just phenomenally awesome. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. If you'd wanted to go to this game, or if you want to go to the Washington game next week, welcome to Husky Hate Week, then Game Time's the place to do it. Because the tailgates, the rivalries that Oregon is going through right now, the energy in the stands, there's nothing like college football. We all know that. Autzen was electric. Absolutely electric. And if you want to get there for a potential home playoff game, if Oregon can beat the Huskies next week, Game Time is the place you want to go. You don't want to deal with endless queues, hidden fees, or prices jumping at checkout. Game Time is the app that gives the advantage back to fans. The easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. That's my favorite part about it, of which there are a lot of great things about Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, it's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. What a glorious second segment. So, what a glorious game this was. So, you realize Dan Lanning and Lincoln Riley were hired the same year? 2022 was their first season. Lincoln Riley made the Pac-12 championship game, and Dan Lanning, of course, did not. And earlier this week, I talked about the recruiting impact and how it was, I think, more important for USC to win this game than it was for Oregon when you talk about off-the-field stuff. But, man, everyone right now that is doubting Oregon, I'm sure they're just fueling Dan Lanning's fire. Seems to be the way the guy's wired. He had a great quote after the game about, he's heard plenty of chatter. I'm sure he, goes on game day, and coaches hear plenty of the stuff that gets tossed around, whether they admit it or not. But he said, well, it's we're people are saying we're not beating any ranked teams, but we play teams and then they're not ranked anymore. So maybe that's not really our fault. Well, I guess it is our fault because they keep winning the games. But, for Oregon to have won this style of game, something that I've heard get talked about a lot nationally in college football this year, and I think is a good thing to talk about. It's not that it hasn't come up before. I just feel like I've heard it a lot this season, is being able to win more than one style of game. This has been brought up with regards to Texas A&M, with regards to Notre Dame, amongst other teams. Ohio State, I think, falls into that category. Oregon is showing that they are that type of team as well. Because here you had a high-scoring, up and down, offense has got to win you the game. And Dante Moore, who we'll talk about later, finished 22 of 30, 257, and 2 scores. Oregon over 400 yards of total offense. USC under 400 yards of total offense in this game. But Oregon's ability, despite being shorthanded, to still go out and have the offense carry you to a win like this, and for the defense to do enough to pick off Jaden Mayava twice, to sack him, 3 times in the game? Let's see. Oregon ended up with only 1 sack in the game. Felt like it was more than that. They had 6 total TFLs. Bryce Betcher, 13 tackles. Man, that's a lot. He had a great game. Bryce Betcher, I thought, played one of his best games of the year. Not coincidentally, USC goes for just 52 yards as a team on the ground. But, I mean, what Oregon did in this spot is reaffirmed what we already knew, which is Oregon is the premier team out west. And, man, it is just not hard to see why USC didn't want Oregon in the Big Ten. It is not hard. The Trojans have the number 1 recruiting class in the class of 2026. Each of the previous 3 cycles, Oregon's had the higher rated class. Oregon's won more games, and now Dan Lanning is 2-0 head-to-head against Lincoln Riley, who I don't think is a bad football coach by any stretch. I really don't. I just know that Dan Lanning is better because I'm watching this play out, and on paper, USC should be a better job than Oregon, and yet Dan Lanning is ahead of where Lincoln Riley is because his team went out there ridiculously shorthanded, going up against a mountain of penalties, only about, 60% of which were actually flags. And then you win the game by 15 points, making every mistake that you could think of. I mean, the beginning of the fourth quarter, nope, I said I'm not going negative. We're keeping it all positive. We're keeping it positive right here. So this is just such a huge statement win. I think if you were to go into the list of the biggest wins of the Dan Lanning era, I think Ohio State 2024 is still number 1. The Big Ten championship is obviously a really big one as well. I don't know that this one would fall outside the top 5 when you look at the stakes. Heck, it might be number 3. It's probably number 3. 2023 Utah was really big too. That was also against a backup quarterback in Bryson Barnes that had overachieved a bit, and Oregon, made him look like a backup quarterback, and they didn't score a touchdown in that game. But for Oregon to have come out in this spot at a time where everyone is, doubting Oregon and trying to find a reason, I tweeted this out earlier. It was really annoying to watch. GameDay, program that I love, is watching, and they did a great job. The fans did a great job. The kicks didn't go in until the cameras were off, but respectable efforts from Oregon students on the kicks there. But the discussion around Oregon, when they got to them in the playoff rankings and what they are and what kind of team this is and all that, they went straight to the resume. They went straight to that's fine. That's fine. You want to point out, hey, they don't have a win over currently ranked team. Okay, you can't keep having Oregon play ranked teams and then they lose to Oregon and then they're not ranked. Oh, you don't have a ranked win. It's the most ridiculous conversation. Frankly, it comes a lot from the SEC homer crowd, and it's starting to get on my nerves a whole heck of a lot, which we know ESPN has a tendency for that as well. But for GameDay to go to Oregon and say, well, their resumes are Notre Dame passes the eye test, man. I'm like, whoa, hold on, whoa. Oregon just beat the brakes off of Minnesota 56-10. That wasn't eye test. That's a bowl team that they beat 50 or whatever the score. No, sorry, they beat Rutgers 56-10 and Minnesota 42-13. That didn't pass the eye test. Are you going eye test or resume? The committee is a very eye test driven committee. Well, guess what? Oregon passed the eye test and got their best resume moment of the season so far. Because USC will not lose to UCLA next week. Nico Iamaleava might not even play in that game. I mean, it's college football. Anything could happen there. But USC should not be outside of the top 20, and Oregon beat them by 15 points. And anybody who watched the game, and I think there are plenty of people that have talked about the Ducks this year that haven't watched the game, because I continue to hear and be annoyed at the commentary about the Indiana game and what that has just become. Oregon outplayed USC far more than Indiana outplayed Oregon earlier this year, which the Hoosiers did. But Oregon was way more in control of this game. Indiana was never, not at a single point in time, close to breaking that game open and winning by 3 to 4 possessions. Oregon had about 3 chances to do that in this one, and they weren't able to do it. But when USC responded, when plays got made, calls were made or didn't, Oregon's ability to respond over and over and over in this game was utterly spectacular. This was a really difficult game to win. You're playing a good team. You got a lot of things working against you, and you just went out and won the football game. Why? Because Oregon is a better program and a better team than USC. That was decidedly the case at Autzen Stadium. It was really awesome to watch. And in a rivalry game like that, man, it's got to suck to be a USC fan right now. Overall, they've got an upward trajectory. There's no question about that. From last year to this year, they have significantly improved. The recruiting's taken a step up. They've got an upward trajectory. But this game showed that they've still got a little ways to go to catch Oregon. Because USC was if Oregon had lost this game, that would have been a heartbreaking, crushing, soul-defeating, just rip your heart out of your chest way to lose the game because you go, wow, I felt like Oregon was in control the entire time. I mean, USC on their first drive, maybe they go for it and maybe they get it on 4th and 7 and throw a 50-50 ball and get a flag. But on the first drive of the game, Oregon stops USC. Blanket coverage, 3rd and 7, 12 men on the field. Yeah, USC played with some tempo, but Oregon had substitution issues a number of times in this game. And so for that to be the reason that drive stayed alive, and then what did you do? Offense had a response, just like that, right down the field. Jordan Davison scored a touchdown. Why? Because how in the world would a football game go if Jordan Davison... What is a football game without Jordan Davison scoring? I compare it right now, I just thought of this, Jordan Davison to Ducks versus them. I don't recall what it was like to watch Oregon games without Ducks versus them, and I never want to know. I don't know what games are if Jordan Davison doesn't get into the end zone. And I don't want to know because the dude's a stud. There's so many individuals that I will have to shout out on Tuesday's show. I'm already excited for preemptively. I'm excited for that. Monday, I'm going to talk about the things that Oregon still has to do better, things that I didn't feel like they did really well, or situations that could have been handled differently. But man, like I said, it is all positive on this show because this was an absolutely awesome football game. This is one of the most that Ohio State last year still number one for me, but man, with the rivalry factor against USC, I think this is number two in the last couple seasons. And man, I'd struggle to come up with a lot that are bigger than those. Like I got a greater sense of enjoyment and satisfaction watching Oregon win this game than I did the Big Ten championship against Penn State last year. Penn State earlier this year. That one high on the list, on the road, a lot of factors working against them. But, you know, for this to be USC, the school that killed the Pac-12, that didn't want Oregon to come along, and for Oregon to be there and to beat them again, that is right in the sweet spot of a feel-good moment for an Oregon fan. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let me up on Twitter, all that good stuff. Man, a couple of big time moments that need to be shouted out from this game in the positive, and then Dante Moore. Man, I like Dante Moore. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. I predicted Oregon to win and cover the 10.5. They did just that, winning by 15 points. Literally could have been 30. Could have been. I'm not going to dwell on that, though, because Oregon gets the win. And you know what? Not every Oregon team is great at covering relative to Vegas's expectations. Oregon basketball 0-4 against the spread. I'll see them Monday night in Vegas against Auburn, and hopefully they can pull an upset there. But if you think you know how Oregon games are playing out on a weekly basis, FanDuel's the place to go. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Okay, the Malik Benson punt return. I've said for the last couple of years, you know, Gary Bryant, when he is healthy and back there, and he wasn't in this game, and when he's back there returning punts, I feel really confident, and this is not nothing, that he's going to catch the ball and not fumble. I feel really good about that. Malik Benson's punt return, 85 yards to the house, was such a huge moment in the game. Scores were going back and forth a little. It was earlier on. And for Oregon to just, at a real inflection point early in the game, make that statement there, I tell you what, that is the best Power 4 college moment of Malik Benson's career. And I think that was the loudest Autzen Stadium was during the entire game. His ability to step up, the number of guys that had to step up because of injuries. Malik Benson made big plays. Kenyon Sadiq saw a bigger role. He finished with, he was Oregon's leading receiver, 6 catches, 72 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It was always in there. It was always possible. And all that was required for Dante Moore to throw him the ball, or Will Stein to dial up more plays, was just a complete decimation of the Oregon receiving room. Good problem to have. Really good problem to have. But Malik Benson stepping up big time. The 30-yard reception, unfortunately, of course, had the unsportsmanlike, which is kind of soft, but also, you know, Lanning chewed him out justifiably because you can't I know it's an emotional game, man, and it's easy for me to sit here behind a mic and say you can't let your emotions get the better of you. Frankly, I probably would. I probably would in a rivalry game. But guess what? Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it okay. Was it soft? Yeah. But can the flag be thrown? Absolutely. That's it's not like it wasn't a flag, like a bunch of the defensive pass interference calls in this game. So Malik Benson, incredible. Man, Noah Whittington, 19 carries, which I think was one off a career high, 104 yards and a touchdown. I'm loving more and more watching that guy run the ball. Can you just think for a moment about where Noah Whittington was first half of last season? Anytime Jordan James came off the field, you felt like the Ducks had no answer to run the ball, or you knew it was going to be a pass. Like you could just chalk it up in your head. Oh, Oregon's gonna throw this or run Dylan Gabriel or get something to Sadiq on a screen. You can't run it with no. Look at where he's at now. He has gotten healthy. He was beat up in this game. He was horse-collared. He was face masked. Not that the officials gave a rip about that. But he just went out there. I don't hear him complaining. He just takes the ball, runs through a bunch of guys' faces over and over again. He's become more than just capable. He's become a guy that can set the tone. And what I love about this 3-back rotation is you can feed the hot hand, call different plays. And by the way, Will Stein, this is an underrated part of what Will Stein does well as an offensive coordinator. I've talked about it a couple times this year, but he's really creative in the run game and calls the right sorts of plays at the right time. And his ability to mix and match different concepts, I think, has been tremendous for this Oregon offense. And having 3 different running backs allows him to do that. So Davison was bottled up compared to what he's been doing. 13 carries, 50 yards, and a touchdown. That's all. half 100 on less than 15 carries. This guy stinks. Davison's a stud. De'Aaron Hill, only 4 carries, 28 yards, though. That's 7 yards a touch. He also had 2 catches for 9 yards. But Whittington was Oregon's best running back today. Last week, you would have said Jordan Davison. You know why? Because Jordan Davison was the best running back. Against Penn State, you probably would have said De'Aaron Hill. I love that they are in that place with their rushing attack, that they can go to any of those guys. And on any day, it can. And today was a Noah Whittington day. That is an awesome thing to see. He is very quietly among the longest tenured Ducks on this roster, along with Bryce Betcher. And he's in his 4th year. This is the 4th year of Noah Whittington. And really, it's the 3rd because we barely saw him in 23 because he got hurt in the Colorado game. But I think this was his best game. When you consider the stakes and what was required of him running the football, man, I don't know his yards after contact numbers. I imagine they're really good because he ran the ball so incredibly well. He's just running so hard. He's physical. He's making good reads. He's decisive. He's getting extra yardage, and he's still explosive. His longest run in this game was 17, but we've seen him break big runs all season long. Yeah, I mean, what he did against Minnesota last week with the Marshawn Lynch style beast mode breaking out of the pack sort of deal. I'm all about it. I'm all about what this running back room brings to the table. Bryce Betcher running for a touchdown. Oh my gosh. If that hadn't worked for any reason, I don't even have to finish that thought. You already know. If that hadn't worked for any reason, that was 3rd and goal. That was wild formation. You got Bear Alexander and Amari Washington lead block it. You know what? It worked. Bryce Betcher runs for a touchdown in what is officially his senior day. But if Oregon wins next week, won't be his last game at Autzen Stadium. Absolutely will not. So, yeah, had to shout out Whittington, Sadiq, so awesome. Bryce, 13 tackles. Mateo had a strip sack in this game. The secondary, we'll talk about that more tomorrow. But, amongst the And when I go back and watch the entire game, I didn't see large chunk. I didn't really see the first half, basically, but I watched the entire second half. And it's just how it worked out with the SCU game. And it's funny, we were the SCU game ends in double overtime, and then we get on the bus. We're getting ready to go on the bus, and I was watching, of course, watch, but then I got to go do the post game interview with our coach, and so then I don't see what happens for a little while. But then I'm watching on the bus. Then we get to the airport, okay, and there's 4 buses of people that are going to get on the airplane, and so I'm on the 3rd bus. So ordinarily it goes offense, defense, special teams and staff, and then donors and other admins on the 4th bus. Because I wanted to see the very end of the game, I'm letting everybody go ahead of me. Like, I'm telling my boss, our SID, like, everyone on this bus is getting off before me. I'm not missing the end of this game. There is no way. I'm not missing something because I'm in a security line. Like, no. Absolutely not. Get out, and the line's moving through. The 4th bus still has to unload. I'm like, go. Just go. I'm sitting there, got my laptop linked to my hotspot on my phone, and I'm just watching in the parking lot, on the runway, basically, of an airport in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. That's where I watched the end of this Oregon game. Fun fact. So anyway, I don't even know where I was going with, or how I got to that particular thought. But in this game, of all the game breakdowns, matchup identifiers, and keys to success for the Ducks, I gotta say this is one of the better ones I've ever probably done. So, the 3 keys I had for Oregon in this game: disrupt Jaden Mayava's rhythm and timing with quarterback pressure. I think they did okay at that. They had a couple other chances to sack him than the one they had, which was Mateo's strip sack. That one's like half of a check mark there. Establish the run game early. Yep, definitely a check. And then win the money downs was the last key. I also talked about the trick plays that USC was going to use. That resulted in a touchdown. Crazy throw and catch, by the way. Absolutely crazy. But overall, Oregon on 3rd and 4th down combined was 7 of 13. They missed on their only 4th. They were 7 of 12 on 3rd. And then for USC, they were a combined 9 of 19, which isn't great for Oregon, but it's not terrible, and it's a better percentage than the Trojans. So you get a check mark. Not an emphatic one, but a solid one. So they get 2 full check marks and 1 half on my keys to the game. How often was Makai Lemon going up against Jaden Kennedy? I thought was great. Makai Lemon in this game? I mean, USC's got a bunch of receivers. Jacoby Lane's really good at pushing off. And Makai Lemon, 7 catches for 34 yards and 2 touchdowns. Makai Lemon did not have a catch of 10 or more yards. That's crazy good work from this Oregon defense. Crazy good work. But that's why USC's got a bunch of good guys there. So, want to wrap talking about Dante Moore. The interception is on Dante Moore, also on Will Stein, because there was averaging 5+ yards a carry. Again, I'm going to save that for tomorrow. Dante Moore, 22 of 30, 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Man, he is starting to evolve and grow up in front of our very eyes. There were a couple of throws in this game. His arm talent is so crazy good. Couple of throws in the second half that stood out. Number 1, his second touchdown to Kenyon Sadiq. That is a big boy throw. Hitting the seam shot against cover 2 with the 2 safeties bearing down. Unbelievable catch by Kenyon Sadiq. Like, he's going to be tight end 1, which stinks, but, it's the downside of having really good players on your team. So, he's incredible. But Dante's throw, phenomenally awesome. Another one, 3rd down and 4. Oregon was driving on their last touchdown drive. They were, I don't think, in go-for-it range because they were just on their own side of midfield. He hits an out route to Malik Benson that is going all the way across the field, on the money, away from the defender. Benson creates separation, and man, that's just a big-time throw. In the box score goes down as a 6-7 yard completion. Given the stakes, USC had just made it a one-possession game. Oregon had blown several chances to get a 3-possession lead, which somehow they never held in this game, which is wild, because I think they had literally 3 offensive drives that if they'd gotten any points on that drive with how well they were running the ball, they would have had a 3-possession lead. And USC was just hanging around. And then Dante Moore on 3rd and 4 goes all the way across the field. That was great. Later in that same drive, the screen pass that led to the hurdle from Kenyon Sadiq, much tougher throw than you would originally think, because most quarterbacks can throw and complete a screen pass, right? It's not that hard. It's not that hard, Scott. Tell them, Wash. It's incredibly hard. It's not. What the great quarterbacks are able to do is be precise, so they put the ball on their guys in the right spots. When you hear the term yards after catch, this is more applicable and is done at a higher level for downfield passes. Yards after catch is a function of the quarterback throwing the ball in the correct spot, because you can't have your receiver needing to break stride. Now, Dante Moore does that well on quick throws to the outside, but the touch pass that he threw to Kenyon Sadiq on the screen that was just over the top of the defensive lineman. I talked about Dante Moore and downfield touch throws he had last week against Minnesota. I felt like in that spot, it was just kind of another step forward. It sounds like a small thing, but he's just showing the whole arsenal over and over again. The deep throw to Malik Benson in the first half, awesome throw, great catch, 30-yard completion, longest of the day. The way that he is continuing to get better, not just at playing, but really understanding and doing everything it takes to be a quarterback beyond just being a physically gifted guy, is a really awesome thing to watch. And a credit to Will Stein, a credit to him. His offensive line, no sacks in this game. Man, that's got to feel bad for USC. They're going up against second and third string linemen the whole game. Their defensive line wasn't majorly banged up, at least not that I saw. Jakeem Stewart's really good, by the way. That guy looks good. Worth the money that they paid for him. Props. He's going to be really good. Already is a good player, but they don't have the guys up front. Lincoln Riley just hasn't built his team the same way that Dan Lanning has. Lincoln Riley's starting now, but he started too late. Thought he could just rely on the portal, didn't recruit heavily enough, and those trends showed up in this game because Oregon emphasized what? The defensive line was the first thing they did when the staff got established, was we're going to go find our D linemen of the future. And we're going to have depth, and we're going to have high-end talent. And guess what? USC was Jaden Maya was under pressure more than Dante Moore. USC generated 2 TFLs. Oregon generated 6. USC ran for 52 yards. Oregon ran for 179. Sometimes those things translate. Sometimes they don't. And they translated in a big way in this game. That was the biggest difference. Between all those offseason moves that plenty of you talk about with USC fans, showed up in this game. And Dante Moore, not a good interception. But overall, man, his growth and bounce back ability since the Indiana game has been great. You think about the way he played in this game, and it was really good. You think about the way he played when his best was required against Iowa, and it was awesome. Battling the elements out there. My confidence in him continues to grow week after week. And man, I want him back for 26. He could have a special kind of season. He's going to have an elite lineup of weapons who maybe only half of them will get hurt. That'd be cool. If half of Oregon's receiving core was hurt, there would have been 2 more players available in this game. So, just throwing that out there. And yet, like Dante Moore did not throw for as many yards as Jaden Maiava. He outplayed him. You know, Maiava had the benefit of, number one, OPI did not exist, so credit to them for just going back to the well on that. If the officials aren't going to call it, hey, keep doing it, I guess. But Jaden Maiava made some good throws in this game, to be sure, but a number of his biggest plays were just throwing the ball up and his receiver helping him out. Dante Moore is helping his receivers out. So I love the way that he played. Made a bunch of big-time throws, the clutch factor, protecting the ball when it counts, making the good reads, and then showcasing the arm talent. He's just getting more and more fun to watch every single game. So what a win for Oregon. This is an awesome, awesome moment. Hope you all enjoyed it, and hope you all enjoyed the reaction show too. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.